If you constantly find yourself measuring your life against other people's lives, it is not because you're insecure. There is literally a hardwired survival mechanism in your brain that was designed to do exactly that. And in this video, I'll explain how it works, why social media has turned it into something genuinely damaging, and the 3 steps to finally get out of it. My name is Emma Grace, the first studied cognitive science in computation at the University of Pennsylvania. And after 4 years of studying how the human brain processes social information, I think this is one of the most misunderstood things happening inside your mind right now. So, Leon Festinger was a social psychologist at MIT. And in 1954, he proposed something called social comparison theory. And what he found is that your brain has a built-in drive to evaluate itself. It needs to know, am I doing okay? Am I falling behind? Am I good enough? And because there is rarely an objective ruler you can hold up to your own life, your brain does the next best thing. It looks at the people around you and uses them as the measuring stick. And here's the important part. This was not a flaw in your design. This was a feature. For most of human history, your social group was your survival. If you were falling behind the group, eating less, contributing less, being valued less, that was genuinely dangerous. So your brain evolved to monitor your standing constantly, automatically, and obsessively. Social comparison was not vanity, it was a survival tool. But here's where it gets complicated. Your brain did not evolve for Instagram. It did not evolve for LinkedIn. It did not evolve for a world where you are exposed to the highlight reels of 10,000 people before you've even had your morning coffee. And the comparison circuitry that kept your ancestors alive is now running on a dataset it was never designed to process. And here is what happens in your brain when you compare. There are 2 types of social comparison. The first is upward comparison, where you compare yourself to someone who appears to be doing better than you. And the second is downward comparison, where you compare yourself to someone who appears to be doing worse. And research consistently shows that humans default to upward comparison, especially online, because social media platforms are architecturally designed to surface the most aspirational content possible. So when you see someone your age with a better job, a better body, a more exciting life, your brain registers that as a threat, and your amygdala activates, cortisol rises. And you experience that specific feeling of unease that sits somewhere between anxiety and shame. Researchers call it social pain. And brain imaging studies have shown that social pain activates the same neural regions as physical pain. Your brain does not distinguish between the two. And here's why it gets worse. Every time you go through that cycle, you see something, you compare, you feel that pain, your brain is not just reacting, it is learning. It is strengthening the neural circuit that connects social observation to threat response. So the more you engage with content that triggers comparison, the faster and more automatic that threat response becomes. Comparison starts happening before you're even consciously aware of it. And there is a second thing happening simultaneously. Cortisol, which is the stress hormone your brain releases during that threat response, directly suppresses dopamine production. And dopamine, as we've discussed before, is the chemical that generates motivation, curiosity, and the feeling that your own life is worth pursuing. So every comparison loop is quietly draining the very resource you need to actually build the life you want. This is why people who spend the most time comparing often feel the most paralyzed. It is not weakness, it is chemistry. And now you might be thinking, well, I know comparison is bad for me. I've known that for years. So why can I not stop? And the answer is that you are trying to fight a survival mechanism with willpower, and willpower will lose every single time. The solution is not to try harder to stop comparing. The solution is to understand how the mechanism works, and then change the inputs it is running on. So here are 3 things that actually work. Step 1 is to audit your comparison inputs. Festinger's original research found that we compare most intensely with people who are similar to us in relevant ways. We don't compare ourselves to Olympic athletes because the gap is too large to register as threatening, but we compare intensely with people who are just slightly ahead of us in areas we care about. So the first question to ask yourself is, who exactly am I comparing myself to, and why do I consider them similar enough to compare with? Because most of the people you're comparing yourself to online are not actually your peers. They are curated performances of people at their peak moments, filtered through algorithms designed to make those moments look as aspirational as possible. You are comparing your internal experience, your doubt, your confusion, your ordinary Tuesday to someone else's external highlight. And that comparison is not just unfair, it is neurologically meaningless because the inputs are not equivalent. Step 2 is to convert upward comparison into information rather than judgment. Psychologist Penelope Lockwood at the University of Toronto found that upward comparison does not have to be destructive. It depends entirely on what your brain does with the signal. When you see someone ahead of you and your brain reads it as evidence that you are falling behind, that is destructive comparison. But when you see someone ahead of you and your brain reads it as evidence that where you want to go is actually reachable, that is called inspirational comparison. And the neural pathway activated is completely different. The practical shift is this: next time you feel that specific sting of comparison, instead of closing the app or spiraling, pause and ask, what is it about this person's life that I actually want? And is there one concrete thing I can do this week that moves me slightly closer to that? You are redirecting the comparison signal from threat to information. You are using your brain's monitoring system for its original purpose, which was to help you adapt and improve, not to make you feel inadequate. And step 3 is to deliberately create what researchers call self-referential benchmarking, which sounds complicated, but the idea is simple. Instead of using other people as your measuring stick, you train your brain to use your past self. And this is not just motivational advice. There is actual neuroscience behind it. Research from the University of California found that people who track their own progress over time show significantly lower cortisol responses to upward social comparison because their brain already has a satisfying reference point that does not depend on anyone else. Practically, this means once a week, for 5 minutes, you write down one way you are different from who you were 6 months ago. Not better than someone else, different from yourself. It sounds almost too simple, but what you are doing is retraining your brain's evaluation system to run on a dataset that is actually relevant to your life. Because here's the thing, your brain is going to compare. That is not going to stop. The question is what you give it to compare. You are not insecure. You are not weak. You are running ancient survival software on a modern overstimulated dataset. And the fix is not to feel less. The fix is to feed your brain better information. So audit your inputs, convert comparison into information, and start measuring yourself against yourself. Subscribe if this helped, and let me know in the comments, what is one area of your life where you compare yourself the most? I read every single one.